Good evening. It's nice to see you all. I'm Stacy Smith. I'm Senior Counsel and Partner with Jackson & Wagner. And as Janine said, we are a behavioral public relations and management consulting firm. We emphasize the behavioral piece because unlike a lot of what you might have experience with in terms of public relations firms, we do very little in terms of publicity and media and that stuff. What we are focused on is the organizations we work with, their stakeholders who are important to their success, and what are the behaviors that they need from those stakeholders to be successful. And sometimes they need behaviors to do something, and sometimes it means to not do something, and sometimes it's simply to let the organization do something. So we're very focused on the behaviors. We bring to our practice an understanding and underpinnings of the behavioral sciences, psychology, sociology, anthropology, all the way to things like game theory and behavioral economics to really understand why people do what they do. We started our research entity about 25 years ago when we could not find firms out there to do research on that kind of understanding the behavior, what moves behavior for our clients. So we started doing that 25 years ago. The firm is in its 60th year of practice. We've been based in New Hampshire for most of that, but we do have a national clientele. We work with all kinds of organizations, Fortune 50 companies down to small nonprofits, and enjoy all of it because it's all about people and what they do or don't do. So anyway, it was a delight to do the research with you guys. The response was very good. But let me talk to you a little bit about how we got started on this, just the process. We met multiple times with your board of governors, your leadership team, your staff, to talk about what it is you wanted to know, what it is you wanted to find out. We looked at the research that had been done in the past to glean from that, questions that have been asked, where the organization was in past surveys, and what we might ask in this survey to kind of get a sense of where things had come from. So we looked at research objectives around awareness and perceptions, information sources, current and potential services, current and potential behaviors, and future concerns and expectations. And we looked at those research objectives in the subject areas that you see below: business practice and management, this whole continuing education, professional development, advocacy, connecting with the profession, that's networking. We weren't allowed to say networking. Public responsibility of the profession, the role and responsibilities of the Bar Association itself, and the future of the profession. So we kind of looking at all of that, went through multiple questionnaires. Some of you probably took some of those just to see where we were so we could pre-test and refine, and ended up with the final survey. How many of you actually completed the survey? Honestly. Good. All right. Well, we actually had, if I can get this to move, 601 respondents, which is a very good response. We were looking for 400, so 601 was great. And that was out of 2,000 people. It's a 30% return, which is good. A margin of error, 3.77%. Margin of error, for those of you who don't know, is any statistic you see could be 3.77% higher or lower from there. So when you're looking at comparative pieces, if you're looking at 30% to 20%, it could actually be 27% to 23%. And you're looking at some range, just so you understand when you start to look at some of the numbers, what they might mean. We oversampled for younger people and for solo practitioners in New Hampshire because we wanted to make sure those were going to be responding. And you'll see that the numbers came out pretty reflective of what the membership is. Slightly younger in-state respondents versus out-of-state respondents. Just given the direction and the future of the association, we really wanted to make sure we heard from those people. Firm size, responses versus actual. You'll see on the left, the sample was 37% of what we got. The actual for solo practitioners was 35. 2 to 10 attorneys, 39.8 versus 40, and over 10, 23 to 25. So you see, it really matched up nice, which is always good when you're a researcher and you do stats. that everything comes out the way it should. Length of time a member, pretty distributed across, also very in line with what you have at the moment in the association. So what I'm going to do is walk us through some top findings, real highlights. So we're going to find, when we walk through the data, that most of your members really value the association. There's really no question about that. There's a lot of value that they see from it. They get their education. The CLEs are most valued for them for their education. Information is highly valued. They're getting a lot of information flowing from the association, and that's something that's very important to them. Some support the advocacy that the association is doing, and others don't. And we'll look at some of those numbers. There's a real conversation around what you should be advocating for and what you shouldn't be advocating for. Pro bono is done, but it's often done independently of the Bar Association entirely. People are saying that they're doing it externally for a variety of reasons, and we'll see what those are. The connections, that networking piece is important, but not for everybody. Not everybody's saying, oh, I need you to go out and make sure I'm connected with other people. I can do that on my own. Many concerns for the future of the legal profession. And you'll see one of the real pieces of data that's very interesting is how many people do not expect to be practicing law in 10 years. And this is not just the ones who are ready to retire. This is kind of across the whole piece, which is something to think about. It may mean there's not so much competition, but it may mean there are not enough of you to serve the people who need the services. And a significant portion, there it is, young and old, may leave the profession in the next 10 years. So I've clustered the findings into 4 particular areas. Their overall perceptions, and then information and connection, the networking piece of those kinds of issues, member services, and preparing the environment. And I'll explain a little bit more when we get to that particular piece. So overall perceptions. Most members value the Bar Association. As I said, if you look, all respondents, you've got 80% who say they somewhat value versus value very valuable. You've got it there. When we talk about members beyond the main 3 counties, the data was divided into those people, and Janine helped me. It was Rockingham, Merrimack, no, it was Merrimack, Hillsborough, and that was one cluster. Everybody else was in this other cluster. And when you looked at the data, when you look at it in the actual data, you'll see that people in those three main counties value it actually a little bit less. They don't need it as much as the people who are beyond those counties value it a little bit more. It goes up to, it's in the 80% again. And solo practitioners value it a lot. Those were the areas that they were the highest value for what you guys are doing. The 17% who do not value said they're not valuing those characteristics. They're attorneys who've been practicing a long time. They've been members a long time. They're not members of the sections. They're not getting value that way. They're pretty much in the prime of their career, 40 to 51 years old, meaning they're working their tail off and they're so busy to do anything else. They're not as interested in professional development. They feel they do not need the Bar Association to connect with others. They do less pro bono work, but they do value bar news, but not case makers. So there are a particular type of attorney that's out there that's not feeling the value. It's only 17%. You could probably focus your attention and work pretty hard on the 17% and maybe even drop it to 10%. But you probably won't get past there because in most organizations, most memberships, you're going to have 10% of the people who don't want anything to do, or not happy, will never be happy. You won't satisfy them. So, how much work do you do on dropping this to 7 to 10%, and how much work do you do on bringing up the value even more to those who are on the other side? It's a strategy question that you and your Board of Governors can really start to think about as you move forward. What is the work that the Bar Association does that's important to you? The professional development is the most important piece. You've got 85% there who said absolutely. Keeping people informed. So we've got education and we've got information. 55% Advocating, now we're dropping. We're down to 43%, which is half of the education piece. But still, over a third saying advocating is important. 30% advancing the public responsibility, and it goes down from there. Assisting attorney with business practice and management, 24%. Of those in private practice, that went up to 31%. So this is 24% of all people, of all attorneys. The 31% is of those in private practice. So it doesn't really, we kind of expected that to be a higher number. Wasn't that much higher, so. Top concerns for the profession in the next 10 years, impact of technology on profession. That was the highest. Now, this was a multiple choice question. They could answer that. They could answer as many as they wanted, which is why the numbers are that way. You'll see in some of these charts, there's an N and an R. R is for number of the percentage is calculated on the number of responses, and N is calculated on the number of respondents. I'll point it out when we come to charts like that. But this one is calculated in the number of responses, and I don't have the number there, what they are. But concerns for the profession in the next 10 years. Impact of technology, increased competition, professionalism or value of the attorneys, bill fee structure. They're all pretty much in they're not a really widespread. So what that's saying to us is that you've got a lot of concerns out there about what's going on. Too many lawyers, diversity, and debt, which is something that keeps coming up everywhere. Intent to be practicing in the next 10 years. You've got 57% who said yes. You've got 18% here who said no. Intend to be practicing. The top 3 reasons for transitioning out. You've got 60%. Now this is 60% of your no's or not sure's. Retirement, stress, lack of balance. How many of you are stressed? It's men and women under 50 are much more apt to cite stress as a reason for leaving the field. Women are more apt to cite lack of balance, and those who are in the younger age ranges too probably have kids at home, hard to do it all. And those in large firms also cited stress, lack of balance, and hours more than those in small firms or sole practitioners. The smaller firms and sole practitioners seem to have had more flexibility in those kinds of things versus the larger firms, which kind of have to adhere to other expectations. Oops. What could the Bar Association do to be more of value? And these are top line. CLEs, more education. Education keeps coming up on top. Lower the dues or the cost to members. Advocacy, networking, collaboration, communication. Those are in the lower things. But see, this pattern of education just keeps coming up and up over and over and over again. So that's kind of the big picture overall. So now I'm going to go into these 3 buckets, I'm calling them, of data. So this next set of charts are on information and connecting, this networking piece. Value information sources. They love the bar news. You guys love the bar news. It's 82%, everybody said we like the bar news. There's some back and forth about whether it should be electronic or print, and you can imagine if I asked you, those people probably over the age of 35 like it print, and then those under pretty much like it electronically. And the interesting thing to think about strategically is as people age, as more new people come in, that's going to shift. But we're seeing in all kinds of organizations the same thing. The older employee wants their newsletter, they want their paper stuff that they can go and read on the bus or sit in the bathroom or whatever happens to be, and the younger people just want it on their phone. So that's going to be a transition, and so what most organizations are doing both and continue and probably will do both for the next 10 to 15 years until it truly turns over. Listservs, website, you see a lot of the electronic stuff that people are preferring. The Bar Journal, and then word of mouth is actually smaller on this in terms of valuable information sources. Desired communications, emails based on subject preference chosen by you. So there's a lot in all, there's a thread through most of the data of tailoring to me. Somehow tailor the information to me. Don't overload me. Give me what I want. Here it is, the emails. Send me the emails. I'll read the ones that are pertinent to me. Bar news online deployed as a blog, bar journal. See, there's the ones, they're 22%. You still want it in print. Mobile formatted websites, not quite as high yet. In-person programs. So you can see that they're, you know, they're more electronic flowing in that direction. Where the majority are connecting now, most of these are face-to-face kind of events, you know, so you're getting in your educational, in your CLEs, that's where you guys are talking to get to each other. The bar meetings, the local bar meetings and section meetings, those of you who are section people. You've got not a very big number, but some who said they don't even look for connections. And the rest are kind of small. But if you look at the other line, there's 22% there. They were all over the map. They had all kinds of ideas. But it's like 3 people said this, and 4 people said that, and 2 people said this. And so everybody's got their own style and method for how they want to do it. So you kind of have to focus down on behaviorally where are they most apt to be together. And that's at your CLEs and your bar meetings and things like that. So that's where a lot of the networking happens. So strategically, when you start thinking about what do we do about this, you might think about those opportunities when they are together to make sure they have time for networking then. I know that Janine was saying, even when you have these meetings, people want to engineer some time to talk to each other because otherwise you don't get to see each other. So do it when people are naturally together anyway, and you'll be more successful with that kind of giving them the opportunity for those who want to connect. And those who don't will show up later. Desired groups to connect with, subject matter experts in other fields. So a lot of your membership want to hear from people outside of the bar. Bring in somebody who talks about technology. Bring in somebody who's talking about healthcare. Subject areas where they can learn from other places. Other professional associations, bar associations in neighboring states, because those are some experts and role models that they might learn from. And then it goes down from there. And here you can see the 2 columns, 1,236 responses to this, 582 respondents. And that's why the numbers are slightly different. So sometimes we run them this way so you can see the intensity of what people are saying. So you have up down to business or chamber groups, you still have 1/4 of your membership interested in those kind of audiences. Okay, so any thoughts, any questions about the information sources and the networking piece? Does that ring true for anybody? That's kind of that gut feeling. One of the things we like to tell our clients when they're looking at research is if there's something really surprising there, that's worrisome. If it's kind of like, oh yeah, this makes sense, this is what we expected, that means you have your finger on the pulse of what's going on, and that's a good thing. If you're surprised, that means something's wrong and you're not listening quite as much as you need to. Okay, there's no questions there. We'll move on to their input on member services. Value of CLE. We've already been through this. Very important and somewhat important. You've got almost 90%. There's it is one of the things that really bring value to the table for them. So that's important. Barriers to CLE. Why aren't those who are not participating, why are they not doing it? Cost is a factor. You've got over 1/3 that say cost. Limited time is also a factor. No interest or relevance to my work, also a factor. Distance and location. You remember a lot of your membership is outside those 3 cluster counties, and they have to come in from far away, and they're given half a day, they lose the whole day. And one of the overriding trends in all of this data is, and you know this because you're practicing, is time. Your time is money. It's just like us, time is money. you use up too much of my time trying to do that, that's time when I can't serve clients and bill. And so a lot of the underlying comments were always about like this time piece. Don't waste my time, don't spend too much time, I need my time to do other things. So that distance location thing is another strategy point that we'll talk about a little bit later in some recommendations about trying to find ways to take stuff out to them. And timing of program. Women cite cost more frequently than men. Can't explain that per se, but probably has something to do with the pay differentials. Distance location mentioned more frequently for the rest of the state and out of state. Cost and limited time, a big factor for sole practitioners because there's nobody left in the office to do the work if they're at a meeting doing CLE. Reason for attending non-Bar Association CLEs, so other CLEs. Topics offered in my area, more convenient, online offerings, quality of faculty goes down from there, but topics in my area of practice. And the thing is, as an association, you can't offer everything that everybody wants. It's simply, A, not feasible, and it's not cost effective. So there's some strategy there to think about. What is it that small numbers want, and should they be getting it somewhere else? And should you be supporting them trying to find that so that you don't have to do that on that score? It's something to think about. So topics offered in my area of practice, and it's just more convenient. Some of that's done online. I know that some people talked about that. Educational programs desired, and this is a lot there, and I thought, should I cut this chart down? I'm like, no, because actually the number of things on there is more meaningful than what's on there. Their desires for information is from a lot of different areas. So, here's the question, do you try and be everything to everyone? That's a question that you need to ask. Even other was 50%. So there were 50% of the people had other things to say, and some of those were 2 or 3 or 4 people on a particular topic. So there's just so much desire out there for so many different diverse things. Question is, if you're delivering value, are you going to deliver this, or are you going to find another way to help them find what they need? Likely attendance for CLE programs that are not for credit, well, that went really down in flames for the most part. Not very likely or not likely at all, you've got over 50%. Somewhat likely is 32%, and I would say on this one, somewhat likely, about half of them really probably meant that they're not very likely. Again, if you weave in that whole thing around time and value, what are they going to get? They're likely not to do it. Business and management practice needs, helping market my practice to good clients, 30% of respondents, lawyer-to-lawyer referral database, 25 or 26, advice on acquiring and using communications technology, 25, 26%. Those are the big 3 for business and management practice needs, and this was asked of, I believe, 427, that is those who were in private practice, I believe, but I'd have to check that just to be sure. There's, again, a long list, kind of like on the education piece. So, technology assistance, should the Bar Association help with, assist with technology? What would it be? Guidance on software, how-to software education, resource of tech support. We've got 20% all the way down to group purchasing. Law practice management listserv, group purchasing. So there's a lot of technological things out there that they're interested in. After that, it kind of goes down, but still, you've got 13% who want a mobile-friendly website, the website at 18%, vetting vendors at 19%. So there's a lot out there technologically that they're interested in getting assistance in. And transition programs that the Bar Association should offer, and this is around those who are retiring or thinking to leave the field because they're here now. Transition or succession planning of all respondents, 40%. Financial planning, 40%. Career counseling, you're up almost to 40%. Records management, 25%. Some really sizable numbers of people interested in areas that could be supplied to them and bring some value. But these are people, this is your 17% or so who are thinking of leaving the practice of law entirely. Should the Bar Association supply for members, support for members facing discipline? What should they supply? You got 46% more information about the process and 42% in materials. And after that, pretty much that's it. That's all they think that the Bar Association should actually be doing on the discipline issue for members who are facing that. I think that's it for information and networking. Any questions, any thoughts on that section? So I think just to summarize, there are lots of things they want information about. They're very specific about what they don't want, but there's a fair amount there that you'll have to decide as a group what it is you want to supply. So let me explain what I mean by preparing for the environment. So we looked at member services, which is really delivering the value. We looked at information and networking, which is really, again, about you guys getting to know each other and about getting you the information that you need. Preparing the environment is really about preparing society outside of the association for what it is that you do, making sure they understand what you do, making sure that the courts are in line with what you need, that whole piece of social responsibility, anything that makes the environment more receptive and open to the work that you are doing. So that's what's in this cluster. Pro bono participation. 64% of all respondents have done some pro bono, which is great. But 15% of all respondents have done pro bono through the bar and independently. So you've got 15% who have done their own pro bono work, and of that 15% also, they're doing it both independently and through the Bar Association programs. You've got 40%, though, of your membership who's doing pro bono work totally independently of the Bar Association. So that's really something to think about, because you have a whole section that's, group that's working on pro bono. And so how can you start to convert them over? How do you deal with this thing how do you get even credit as a organization, as a group of attorneys? You should be getting credit that there's a lot of pro bono being done. And if you're only talking about the 15%, what about the other 40%? So there's some thinking to do around your pro bono and the fact that you give back to society on that score. Reasons for those who are not doing any pro bono. My area of practice does not lend itself to this type of work. You've got 50% of the people who are using that excuse. Is that a fair way to put it? I don't know, but they're using that explanation. They say their area of practice doesn't lend themselves. You've got 17% who say they're just too busy, and it goes down from there. Dissatisfaction with clients referred, and then there were 50% of a bunch of other excuses. You want to use the mic so it can be recorded?
Just so I understand this, is this only people in private practice, or do you think my practice doesn't lend itself would include people who were, for instance, government employees where they were not allowed to do it?
I will have to go back and look at that, but it's likely to see if those were screened out. I can't remember at the moment, but I would assume at this point that there weren't the numbers of court employees that responded were not that high, so I wouldn't overly look at that.
It's not just court employees, it's members of like DHHS. I mean, there's a lot of attorneys who work for agencies.
Yeah, I can check that for you. It did?
And it would also include people like prosecutors, public defenders.
He's just saying that from his recollection, and there's a lot of data out there, that it probably included prosecutors and DHHS and people who are working in the state government and other places. So that would factor into some of the 47%. So they're not allowed to do public service on that score. Is that, that cover that? Okay. Why conduct pro bono separately? I like to select my own clients was pretty much the top one. They want to make that decision. A lot of them work through other organizations. I mean, I've served on many boards, and there are a lot of attorneys on those boards that have nothing to do with the pro bono work that's done through here, and I'm sure that's considered pro bono. No particular reason. Don't do types of cases offered by the bar programs, which is probably why they're doing it elsewhere. So I think it's saying the overall message here is that it seems your membership likes their flexibility to select their pro bono, where they're doing it, to do what they want to do, when they want to do it, in the way that they want to do it. That's the message that came through to us. Awareness of programs that are advocated for by the Bar Association. You've got 50% of the membership of those who responded to understand that they recognize that court procedural rules are one of the things that you do advocate for, and adequate court funding, and attorney discipline issues, and legislation. So a lot of the legal piece, after that, it kind of drops off. Civil legal aid funding, gender equality, none of these. So this is just whether they're even aware what you're advocating for. So there's not, I mean, it's not terrible amounts of awareness, but it's not, they're not all 100% are aware that you're doing all of this on their behalf. Familiarity with the advocacy programs themselves. You've got 67% know about the New Hampshire, the Bar Foundation. 55% law line and 53% lawyer and judge in every school. Things that fall down are the civics in action. We the People is at about a third. Law Day is a little less than half. So some of them are very familiar. You've got to, but only 2/3 maximum. So it's another question. Again, if they want value and you want them to understand the value you're delivering, then we need to push a little bit more on the things that you do to add value. Issues you should be advocating for. Well, there's a lot of them. And I've left all of these on here so you could see, again, there's a plethora of ideas about what the bar should be advocating for, and not a lot of focusing on one thing. The highest one was the almost 20%, the adequate court funding, revising antiquated systems, and improving backlog. That was the one that got the most. So you've got all of these, and you still have other at 30%, so there were a ton more. Everybody has their own idea what the bar should be advocating for. So somehow focusing everybody down would be nice. Future legal needs expected that there's this was so very interesting. Mental health, substance abuse, and given the news and what's going on constantly, you've got 70% talking about mental health legal needs, elder law, family law, Social Security, disability, public benefits, and navigating through the courts. And then it kind of drops off, veterans issues and consumer law. But you've got some big ones up there that they're seeing as trending going forward, and then they're expecting to do. So quote on the bottom, alternative to incarceration are important, but addiction and mental health are more and more being dealt with through the criminal justice system, which is causing many people to be incarcerated where they should be hospitalized instead. And it's interesting because the study was done, 6-7 months ago now? And it's in, we got a microphone coming.
I noticed that there's nothing on there for housing or evictions, which I know is a big piece of legal needs for low and moderate income people. Is that because the questionnaire itself listed these things and didn't list housing, or are these things that just people wrote down?
These are things people wrote down on their heads.
So
this was
nobody
top of
even
head.
thought of housing? Interesting.
Nope. If it's in there, it's probably under other.
Thank you.
So, that's a highlight of the data. There's more. There's a lot more. There's a whole giant notebook full of it. that you can get. I'm sure the sharing you can look at, but I don't know if you really want to spend your days looking at all those numbers. Questions? Are you still like, wow, that makes sense to me, that's resonating? Reaction? Any other questions before we move on to at least our recommendations on where to go? I hear a roar of silence. Okay, all righty. So then the question becomes, well, okay, we've got all this data. What do we do? What do we do differently, or what do we keep doing the same? And so we now take off our researcher hat and we put on our strategic planning hat, and we look back at the data, and this is what it was saying to us. It was saying, okay, I'm a member. I am required to join this bar association and pay dues. I'm required to do that, right? And really, bottom line, most of them are generally very satisfied, but they're really busy getting clients, serving clients. And others are really satisfied, but too far away, not interested, don't have the financial ability to attend or participate in programming, or I get what I need elsewhere. So I'm a member, but, and I value what you do, but I've got a lot going on. That was kind of the gist from really going through all the information that we had. So minimally member that I am, I partake of what comes to my door. Anything you send to me, I'm probably kind of going through most of it, maybe not all of it, because still a lot comes across my desk from you. A lot of it comes from other places. I'm not really clear what's coming from you and what's coming from other places. I just got a lot of stuff on this stuff. But that which comes to my door, if it's easy, I can do it when I have time, and that doesn't cost me anything extra, so I'm good. I'm required to have a certain amount of education of the CLEs that you provide, but I can also get a lot of that elsewhere. I can do it sometimes a little easier, maybe online, or maybe a little bit more narrowed to what I'm interested in. But I must do the work and find the right track, and definitely for what I need to do. And so it's a lot of work. I am required to have all these CLEs. I'm required to have all this stuff. And I have to take my time, which I could be doing, billing clients, making money. I have to do this stuff, okay? So I want more value, or I want lower costs. Pretty much one way or the other. Give me more or give me lower costs, because I'm not feeling like I'm getting enough value, or you're not showing me I'm getting enough value. And that's the question, the discussion we keep having. Are we even letting them know that what value we are delivering? So we look at this and we say, okay, you can deliver more value in 3 ways. You can deliver it through more customized education services, meaning, and this is now, and I've told staff in this, we're looking at through our lens, the data through our lens, meaning finding a way to help them narrow down that plethora of CLEs and educational stuff that's out there to help them say, oh, this is what I need because this is kind of the track I'm on. I work in these areas of the law. I'm either new to the profession, or I'm in the middle of my experience, or I'm at the top. And so these are the things that I might need because I'm in those things, and help narrow and focus and organize so it takes less time for you all to decide what it is that you're going to do to get your CLEs in. Help add the networking and information, so make sure when you're at that place, when you're with other people, you have time for that networking piece, which is a value, and keep the information coming, do the bar news, do the other things that keep you informed on all those things that you need to have, and make sure that there's a receptive environment for the practice that I'm doing. Make sure the courts are straightened out and things are smooth. Make sure that I am going out and I'm not getting, yelled at or whatever happens to do that I am appreciated for the work that I'm doing as an attorney in the state. So if we can make the environment good, if we can give me the information I need and keep that networking so I'm meeting and greeting and understanding people, and reduce the amount of time I need to focus on what it is I need in terms of education, because that's what I most value, but focus me a little bit more, Now you're delivering more value. Does that make some sense to you? That's our view of looking at the data. You can sit and think about it yourself. So some ways of doing this, in terms of the educational piece, you could do something like career learning tracks, like I just described. So they're formatted for different interests, different career stages. It lessens the burden of decision making and the onslaught of sales. All that's coming in from the Bar Association. It adds value and support. You can take this to the end where you can say, okay, you are an attorney, you're practicing in these areas, and you are in the middle of your career cycle, and you need or want subject matter training, education on this subject and this subject, but we have too few, so we're not going to offer that. But here are some that we have found elsewhere that you might want to look at, and helping sort through that kind of stuff. Now we're adding more value because now you're not having to go out and look for that stuff. They're kind of doing that path. Helps reduce the association's offerings to that is most useful, most appropriate, and because it's important to keeping dues down, that's lucrative for the association. So if the money that's brought in that way keeps dues down, it's kind of simple. And integrates a career transition track as a natural part of your career flow. So people who are getting to the retirement age or people who want to jump off, they have a different track to follow. So it's just an idea to throw on the table. We would also recommend considering small but meaningful numbers of programs or activities that become a perk of membership. And you may already have these, but they've not been labeled a perk of membership. So we need to talk about that. You know, how many people understand that for their membership they get this and this and this and this and this? Do we tell them what we're doing for their behalf? Under networking and information, more meaningful, accessible connections. Integrate more networking into the CLE structured time. More opportunities outside of Concord. Stop making everybody have to come to Concord. It takes up their time. Let's take some stuff on the road. Let's do brown bag lunches and breakfast, maybe out, you know, in the hinterlands, and around local, maybe around webcasts. So one of you can host it at one of your offices, and a couple of attorneys in the area come over, and you get a little networking in, you get a webcast in, you're home in 10 minutes. You're back to your office in 10 minutes, something like that. So these are just ideas to think about. An orientation updated to emphasize the networking mentality and member benefits. So we really push that kind of idea that this is what you are getting for your value. Going into a family look for communications so that when things come across your desk, members recognize that's coming from the bar. If I don't know this is coming from the bar and this is coming from the bar and this is looped in with a bunch of other stuff, I don't see value because I don't know what you're doing for me. The only thing I really get right now that I can see is that bar news piece. That's labeled. Strategic options for the annual mid-year meeting. There was a lot of talk. Do we need these? Do we want these? And then you had a really, really wonderful, productive, was it annual or mid-year? Mid-year. And a lot of people showed up who hadn't been coming. So we wouldn't say, oh, ditch those things. We'd say find other ways to see how you can test the waters and be more productive and draw more people in. And in building a receptive environment, educate and reinforce members' beliefs that the bar's critical role in creating this receptive environment. So really trying to do some more perceptual education around the importance. So continue advocating, but until you can sort through what everybody wants, you know that they want court system improvements, maybe that's the place to focus some attention for a while strictly. Utilize a legislative issue to better articulate your philosophy, review where and how the information is disseminated. Be more strategic about pro bono activities, ways to incorporate all that pro bonos that's being done that has nothing to do with the Bar Association. But how can we get credit in the environment out there in society for all the pro bono that is done? Because it's being done by members, but members are the bar and the bar are members. So that's kind of, you know, let's be more creative. As my mom says, be more clever. Let's be clever about how we can harness all that's going on. And super target to further educate key outside stakeholders, Concord and beyond, to educate them about the role of the legal profession. We've got opinion leaders all across this state. We want them to be, think highly of the legal profession, its importance, to understand all the things that we're doing in terms of advocating, in terms of the pro bono work, in terms of serving society here and making it a civil society. So we need to keep that up. That may be going out and speaking to groups. That might be small group meetings. It might be section meetings where we invite people in that aren't part of the, we need to be interested in trying to find ways to do that. In addition, find some quick hits so that members can see action from input. One of the things about doing research like this is you want to make sure members, A, get the findings, which they have had a broad overview of, but you want them to see some action, because then the next time, if they never see anything from this, then the next time you ask, and I'm sure there'll be a next time, they're going to say, what the heck am I going to answer this for? Nothing happened last time. So you want some quick hits, and you want to keep them informed about other things you're doing that are a result of their response to you in terms of the survey. Approach bigger issues in an integrated way. Have a cohesive plan that positions changes as a better way to deliver value. Start talking about the value you deliver. Every time you have a section meeting, that's value you're delivering. And you need to talk about this, because otherwise they're not going to get that. And make sure all plans and activities have an evaluation component to measure effectiveness, to measure impact, and improve and tweak. If you don't ask for feedback, you can never improve. So we always need to be doing that. So we suggest you continue to do that. That's our recommendations and the data.